The twin suns of Orin-4 burned low in the dusty sky, throwing long shadows across the metal walkways of the spaceport. Crowds of traders, mechanics, and scavengers moved in every direction, their voices mixing with the hum of engines and the hiss of steam vents. Ethan walked through the noise with his hands in his pockets, his eyes scanning the market stalls for anything useful. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, and he certainly wasn't a hero. He was just a small-time mechanic who fixed other people's ships for a few credits. But today, he was hoping for a little luck. The local auction was being held in a corner of the port. It was small, not the kind of place where you'd find rare treasures. Mostly, it was scrap, broken tools, and half-burned engine cores. Still, sometimes a lucky bid could get you something valuable. Ethan joined the small crowd, folding his arms as the auctioneer shouted over the noise. Lot 17, busted nav computer, starting bid 20 credits. People yelled out numbers. The crowd laughed when an old man won it for 10 credits less than it was worth. Lot after lot passed by, none of it worth Ethan's money. He was about to leave when the auctioneer's voice changed. It grew lower, heavier, like he was telling a secret. Lot 42, the man said, pausing for effect. An unregistered long-range shuttle, the crowd murmured, eyes turning toward the back of the yard. There, behind the rusting metal fence, stood a ship. It wasn't shiny or new. In fact, it looked like it had been sitting there for years. Its hull was scratched, its paint was faded, but the shape of it was different, sleek, curved, almost alive. Ethan tilted his head, studying it. It wasn't like any model he'd seen before, and he'd worked on ships his whole life. The auctioneer grinned like he was about to tell a ghost story. Self-sustaining systems, no registry on any database. Comes with working hyperdrive. Then his voice dropped even more. Some say it's haunted. A few people laughed, but others crossed their arms and stepped back. Superstitions ran deep in the outer colonies. Haunted ships were bad luck. Everyone knew that. Ethan didn't believe in ghosts, but he did believe in strange tech, and that ship. It called to him. Bidding started low. No one seemed eager. The price crept up slowly. 30 credits, 35, 40. Ethan's hand rose, almost without him thinking. 50, he said. A few heads turned, measuring him. No one raised the price. The auctioneer looked around, waiting. 50 credits going once, twice. Sold, the crowd muttered as the gavel came down. Some shook their heads. Others smirked like he'd just wasted his money. Ethan stepped forward to sign the transfer. His hand trembled slightly as he took the old key chip. The auctioneer leaned. In his voice, low, "Careful with that one, boy. Ships like her have a mind of their own." Ethan forced a smile and walked toward the gate. The closer he got, the bigger the ship seemed. Its smooth silver surface reflected the dying light of the suns. The entry ramp lowered with a slow hiss. He stepped inside. The air smelled faintly sweet, like flowers, strange for a ship. The lights flickered on without him touching anything. The interior was spotless. No dust, no rust, no sign anyone had lived here for years. Ethan walked slowly through the corridor, his boots echoing. He passed a row of closed doors. One door at the end stood slightly open. A soft blue glow spilled from inside. He pushed it gently. It was the control room. The panels were unfamiliar, the layout strange. The pilot's chair seemed shaped to fit a body perfectly. Ethan's fingers hovered over the controls. Then he froze, somewhere behind him. A voice whispered his name. It was soft, feminine, almost like a breath in his ear. His heart kicked hard in his chest. He spun around. The corridor was empty. No sound, no movement. Only the hum of the ship. He swallowed, telling himself it was his imagination. But then the voice came again, clearer this time. "Ethan, The hair on his neck stood up. It felt like the ship itself was speaking to him. He took one step toward the doorway and the control panels lit up all at once. Engines hummed deep in the belly of the ship. The ramp outside closed with a heavy thud. Ethan stared at the controls. They were moving, sliders shifting, switches flipping, all by themselves. The ship wasn't waiting for him to decide. It was getting ready to leave. Outside, the stars began to shift. Ethan grabbed the pilot's chair. "Wait, stop." He shouted, but the ship didn't listen. Somewhere deep in the walls, that same soft voice spoke again. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It was a promise. "Now, you are mine." The ship's engines rumbled under Ethan's feet. A deep, steady vibration that made his bones feel heavy. He gripped the pilot's chair, staring at the control panels that were moving without his touch. Lights flickered across the displays in patterns he couldn't read. It was like the ship was speaking. In its own language, he didn't understand a word, but he could feel something in its purpose. The view outside changed fast. The spaceport shrank. The rusty towers and crowded market disappearing into the distance. Ethan felt the pull of the engines as they climbed higher. The two suns became bright coins against the black of space. His breath came faster, his hands damp against the smooth armrest. He had no idea where they were going, and worse, he had no control. "Who's doing this?" He shouted into the empty air. His voice echoed back at him. Then the reply came soft, almost gentle, but clear. "I am." Ethan spun in the chair, his heart jumping. A figure stood at the far end of the control room, half hidden in shadow. She was tall, her hair falling like silver water over her shoulders, her skin pale with a faint glow. Her eyes, they weren't human eyes, they were a deep, shimmering silver. Like liquid metal under light, Ethan stepped back, nearly tripping over the chair. "Who are you?" he demanded. The woman didn't move closer. Her voice was calm, but it carried. "Wait, my name is Arya," she said. "I am the caretaker of this ship." Ethan glanced at the controls, then back at her caretaker. "This isn't just a ship, it's flying itself." Arya tilted her head slightly. "Yes," she said. "It does that." He swallowed hard, his mind racing. If she was real, how did she get here without him seeing? If she was a projection, why did her shadow fall across the floor? "Are you human?" he asked. She almost smiled. "No," she said simply. "I am not." Her form shimmered faintly, like heat rising from metal. For a moment, Ethan thought she might fade away entirely. Then she solidified again, her silver eyes locking on his. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "You bought something you don't understand." Ethan's mouth felt dry. "Then explain it to me." Her gaze softened, but her voice carried a warning. "This ship is alive, and I am part of it." He frowned, not sure he heard her right. "Part of it? You mean? You're the pilot?" Her head shook slowly. "I am its heart." Before Ethan could ask more, the ship jolted. A bright flash filled the windows as they jumped into hyperspace. Stars stretched into lines of light, the air vibrating with strange energy. Ethan gripped the chair to stay upright. "What's happening?" Arya turned her face toward the window. "The ship has chosen a destination," she said. "It will not stop until we arrive." "Chosen?" Ethan said. "Ships don't choose. This one does," she replied, her tone like stone. The hum of the engines deepened. Ethan felt a strange pressure in his head, like someone pressing their hand against his thoughts. It wasn't painful, just strange. "You feel it," Arya said quietly. "It can sense you now." Ethan stepped back. "This is insane," he muttered. "I'm getting off when we land." Her silver eyes flickered with something he couldn't name. "If you make it that far," she said. The words hung heavy in the air. Ethan stared at her. "What do you mean by that?" Arya didn't answer right away. Instead, she moved closer, her steps silent, her gaze never breaking from his. Her presence made the room feel smaller. "The ship is not empty," she said finally, "and it is not safe." A chill ran down Ethan's back. "What else is on board?" he asked. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes seemed sad. "You'll find out soon enough," she said. A sudden alarm blared from the panels. Red lights spun across the control room. Ethan turned toward the window and froze. Something huge was moving in the darkness of space. At first it looked like a shadow. Then the shape became clear. A massive vessel was following them. Its jagged hull lit with cold blue lights. Arya's voice was low but urgent now. "They found me." Ethan's mind raced. Who's following us?" "The Korath," she said, the name sharp in her mouth. "They are hunters, and they will not stop until they take me." Ethan gripped the side of the chair, then turned the ship around. Her silver eyes locked on his. "It's too late for that," she said. "They're faster than we are." The pursuing ship grew larger in the window. Its lights scanned across the void like searching eyes. Ethan's heart pounded as the alarm's shrill tone filled his ears. "What do we do?" he asked. Arya's gaze didn't waver. "You decide," she said. "Run or fight." The air between them seemed to thicken. Ethan looked at her, at the strange, living ship, at the shadow closing in behind them, and he knew whichever choice he made, there was no going back. The dark shape of the Korath warship filled more and more of the window. Its jagged hull looked like it had been carved from black stone. Blue lights crawled along its surface, pulsing like a heartbeat. Ethan's hands tightened on the chair as the alarm wailed around him. "They're closing fast," he said, his voice tight. Arya stood still, her silver eyes locked on the enemy vessel. "They will match our every move," she replied. "You cannot outfly them." Ethan's mind spun. He didn't even know how to fly this ship. It was moving on its own. The controls still shifted without his touch, sliders sliding, switches clicking. The engines roared louder, the hum vibrating through his bones. "Then who's flying us?" he demanded. Arya turned to him, her voice calm but unshakable. "The ship itself," she said. "It knows where it must go." "That's not comforting," Ethan muttered. He glanced at the display screens. They showed star charts he didn't recognize, systems he'd never seen before. Bright lines indicated their route, but it meant nothing to him. "Where is it taking us?" he asked. "To my home," Arya said simply. Her tone made it sound like there was no other possibility. Ethan shook his head. "What if I don't want to go there?" The faintest trace of a smile touched her lips. "Your wishes no longer matter to the ship," she said, before Ethan could argue. A deep vibration shook the floor. The Korath warship had fired. Blue plasma streaked past the window. Barely missing them, Ethan stumbled forward, catching himself on the console. "Great, now what?" Arya stepped toward the center of the room. Thin, glowing lines began to appear under her feet. Spreading across the floor like veins of light, the ship responded, its hum shifting to a higher pitch. Ethan watched in awe as the lights climbed the walls. "Wrapping around the panels, they are locking onto us," Arya said. Her voice was still calm, but her eyes told a different story. There was tension there. "Can't you just make this ship go faster?" Ethan asked. Arya's gaze flicked to him. "It already moves at its limit," she said. "To go faster would require a bond." Ethan frowned. "A bond? With who?" Her eyes locked on his. "With you." Ethan blinked. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," she replied. "But without it, the Korath will catch us." Another blast shook the ship. This one close enough to make the lights flicker. Ethan swore under his breath. "Fine, tell me what to do." Arya stepped closer, stopping just in front of him. "You don't do anything." She said, "You allow," before he could ask what she meant. She reached out and touched his temple. Her fingers were warm, but the warmth spread instantly through his whole body. It wasn't fire. It was like sunlight in his veins. He gasped as images flashed in his mind, not his own memories, but the ship's worlds he'd never seen. Skies of colors that didn't exist on Earth. A deep, powerful presence filled his thoughts. It wasn't human, but it wasn't hostile either. It was curious. It was aware of him. He realized with a jolt that the ship was looking at him. Not with eyes, but with something deeper. It searched through his thoughts like a hand running over the surface of water. Then, slowly, it let him feel its body, the engines thrumming like a heartbeat, the metal skin stretching under the pull of space. Ethan's breath caught. It was like his senses had expanded in every direction. He could feel the Korath ship behind them, the cold emptiness between stars, the rush of energy through the hyperdrive. "You are connected now," Arya said softly. Her voice was in his ears and in his head at the same time. "You can guide it, if you trust it." Ethan swallowed, his pulse pounding. The thought of controlling something this powerful was overwhelming. But the Korath ship's presence behind them was like a blade at his back. He focused on the feeling of speed, of wanting to get away. The ship responded instantly, its engines surging. The stars outside blurred faster. Ethan's body pressed against the seat from the acceleration. The Korath ship shrank slightly in the window, but it was still following. They're still gaining, he said through gritted teeth. Arya's gaze turned sharp. "Then you must give more," she said. "How?" "Open your mind completely," she said. "Do not resist." Ethan hesitated for only a second. Then he let the strange presence inside him take more of his focus, more of his instinct, more of his fear. The ship roared. The sound deep and alive. They shot forward so fast the stars became streaks of pure light. The Korath ship's image on the display began to shrink. Ethan felt a rush of triumph, but also something else. Something cold. "They will not give up," Arya said quietly. This was only their first strike. Ethan leaned back, chest heaving. His mind still hummed with the ship's awareness. The connection felt permanent. He looked at Arya. "What happens now?" Her silver eyes softened just slightly. "Now," she said, "you are part of the journey, outside." Space stretched on endlessly. The Korath ship was gone from view, but Ethan knew she was right. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. The hum of the engines had settled into a steady rhythm. But Ethan could still feel the faint vibration through the soles of his boots. The connection to the ship lingered in his mind like a faint echo that wouldn't fade. It was strange, not painful, but alive. He could still sense things he couldn't explain. The temperature of the hull, the flow of power through the engines, and even the faint tug of gravity from a planet they had just passed. Arya stood near the window, her gaze fixed on the stars. Her silver hair caught the glow of the control panels, making her look almost like a part of the ship herself. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "They're gone, right?" "We lost them." Arya didn't answer right away. Her head tilted slightly as if she were listening to something far away. Finally, she spoke. "For now," she said. But the Korath never stopped hunting. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "That's reassuring," he muttered. He walked to the other side of the control room, glancing at the displays. The charts still showed their destination, a distant point far beyond any star system he recognized. "So you're taking me to your home," he said. "Yes," Arya replied without turning. "Why?" "You could have dropped me anywhere after the auction." Her reflection in the glass was unreadable. "Because you're part of the ship now," she said simply, "and it does not let go of what it claims." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. Before he could reply, a sudden pulse of awareness ran through his mind. It wasn't his thought, it was the ship's. Something was near. He stepped closer to the window, peering into the darkness. At first, there was nothing but scattered stars. Then a shape began to emerge from the shadows. It wasn't glowing like the Korath warship. It was darker, harder. To see, like it was made from the night itself, Ethan's gut tightened. Please tell me that's a friendly ship. Arya's silver eyes turned toward the shape, her face perfectly calm. That is no friend, she said. That is a hunter. Ethan's jaw tightened. I thought the Korath ship was a hunter. She shook her head slowly. The warship was only a scout. This is a shadow stalker. The name sent an unexplainable shiver through him. What's a shadow stalker? He asked. Arya's voice lowered a living weapon, built to find and claim whatever the Korath mark. Ethan stared at the dark shape. How is it moving without any lights? It doesn't need them, she said. It sees through the dark better than you see in the day. The shadow stalker glided closer, silent and steady. Ethan could feel it in the connection with the ship, not like a normal vessel, but more like a predator. It was aware, almost as if it could sense him the way he could sense it. Can we outrun it? He asked. Arya shook her head. No, it is faster, and it will follow us until one of us is gone. Ethan's pulse quickened. Then we fight, he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Her gaze stayed locked on the shadow stalker. You would not survive open combat, she said plainly. Ethan clenched his fists. So what's the plan then? Just wait until it decides to attack. Her eyes flicked to his. We hide, she said, before Ethan could argue. The lights in the control room dimmed. The hum of the engines lowered to a near-silent whisper. The ship's systems shifted in two. A mode Ethan had never seen. Panels powered down. Displays went dark. Even the faint vibration under his boots lessened. What's happening? He asked in a hushed tone. We are becoming part of the void. Arya said softly, to the hunter, we will be just another shadow. Ethan tried to keep his breathing quiet. The shadow stalker passed slowly across their path, its sleek form, like a blade sliding through the black. For a moment, he thought they might actually fool it. But then the connection in his mind pulsed again, sharper this time. The hunter had turned toward them. It knows we're here, he whispered. Arya's voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp now. Yes, she said, and it will not stop. The shadow stalker's outline began to grow as it closed the distance. No lights, no weapons visible, but Ethan could feel its intent like a knife's edge. What do we do? He asked. Her answer was immediate. We run into the dark, deeper than it can follow. With a sudden surge, the ship came alive again. The engines roared, the panels lit up, and they shot forward into a field of swirling black mist. The stars vanished from view, replaced by shifting shadows that moved like living smoke. Ethan's breath caught. Where are we? The shroud, Arya said, her voice almost a whisper. A place no sane pilot enters. The mist closed around them, twisting into strange shapes. Ethan swore he saw faces in the shadows. The connection in his head buzzed with strange whispers. He couldn't understand. The ship pushed deeper, the shadow stalker still behind them. Its shape flickered in and out of sight. Ethan gritted his teeth. I really hope you know what you're doing. Her voice came like steel. I do. But you might not like what comes next. The shroud was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Dark mist twisted and swirled around the ship, curling into shapes that almost looked alive. Sometimes they seemed to reach for the hull, stretching into long fingers before melting back into the void. There was no up or down here, only drifting shadows and strange glimmers of light that appeared for a heartbeat and vanished. The shadow stalker was still behind them. It moved like a predator gliding through deep water, always keeping just enough distance to remind them it was there. Ethan could feel its presence in his mind through the strange link with the ship. It wasn't just chasing. It was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Ethan turned. To Arya, "You said the shroud would give us an advantage," he said, his voice tense. "It will," she replied, her silver eyes reflecting the faint glimmers outside. "Then why do I feel like we're still losing?" "Because we are," she said, without flinching. Her calmness made Ethan's stomach twist. "Then tell me how we survive," he demanded, her gaze locked with his. "You already know," she said. "You felt it in the first connection, Ethan." "Frowned, you mean? The bond thing?" "Yes," she said, stepping closer. "The ship and I are one, but now you are part of that bond." "Two," he shook his head. "I barely understand it, and you want me to use it in the middle of a chase." Her voice softened. "If you don't, we die." The words hit like a punch. No time for doubt. No time for questions. Ethan took a deep breath and closed his eyes, trying to focus on the strange presence in his mind. It was there, waiting, curious. He opened himself to it, letting the warmth of the connection spread deeper. His heartbeat slowed even though adrenaline raced through him. And then the ship's senses became his own. He could feel every shift in the engines, every change. In the energy flow, he could sense the mist of the shroud curling around them. He could even feel the shadow stalker's movement. Like ripples in dark water, Arya's voice came through the bond. Not just in his ears, but in his head. "Now you can see it as I do," she said. "Use it." Ethan didn't know exactly what to do, but instinct took over. He imagined the ship moving faster, cutting sharper through the mist. The response was immediate. The engines surged, the hull tilted. They slipped between two massive swirling shadows, vanishing into thicker cover. The stalker followed, but its path was less direct. It had to slow down to avoid crashing into the dense folds of the shroud. "That's working," Ethan said, his voice filled with new energy. Arya's expression was unreadable, but he could feel her approval through the bond. "Good," she said. "Now push harder." Ethan closed his eyes again. Pushing the thought of speed into the connection, the ship roared in response, diving and twisting through the mist like it was alive. The stalker stayed behind, but it was struggling to match their agility. For a moment, hope flared in Ethan's chest. Maybe they could actually lose it, but then the presence in his mind shifted a sharp warning from the ship. "It's preparing to strike," Arya said suddenly. "How do you know?" "'Cause I can feel its hunger," she said, her voice tightening. "Then what do we do?" Ethan asked. She turned to him. "We fight back," before he could argue. The panels in the control room lit with new patterns. The ship's hidden weapon systems came online, their power humming through the bond. Ethan felt them as if they were muscles tensing before a leap. "Guide them," Arya said. "Don't think about controls, think about striking." The shadow stalker lunged forward, breaking through the mist. It was closer now, its surface shimmering with strange black energy. Ethan focused, imagining a blast hitting it dead center. The ship obeyed. A sudden pulse of light erupted from beneath the hull. The beam sliced through the mist and hit the stalker, making it shudder. But it didn't stop. Instead, it darted to the side and began circling them. Ethan's pulse hammered. "It's fast," he said. "It's not faster than you." Arya replied. He narrowed his focus, imagining the ship darting upward into a tight spiral. The engines responded instantly, pulling them high above the swirling shadows. From this angle, Ethan saw the stalker's weak point, a faint glowing seam along its side. "There," he said. "Hit it there." Arya's eyes gleamed. "Then make it happen." Ethan poured everything into the bond, speed, precision, and the will to survive. The ship dove toward the stalker, weapons flaring again. The blast struck the glowing seam, and the stalker convulsed. Its black surface cracked, spilling strange silver fluid into the mist. The predator twisted away, its movements unsteady. Ethan felt its presence fading in his mind. "It's leaving," he said. "For now," Arya answered. The bond between them pulsed softly, no longer filled with tension. Atitha leaned back in the chair. Exhausted but alive, he looked at Arya. That was something. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You are stronger than I expected," she said. Ethan managed a weak grin. "Yeah? Well, I had a good teacher." Outside, the mist of the shroud began to thin. But somewhere deep in the shadows, Ethan could still feel the faint echo of the hunter. It wasn't gone for good, and neither was the danger ahead. The shroud thinned until the stars returned. The cold, less black, stretched in every direction, but Ethan couldn't relax. The bond between him and the ship still hummed softly in the back of his mind. He could feel faint ripples from the shadow stalker somewhere behind them. It was hurt, yes, but not destroyed. Predators didn't give up so easily. Arya stood near the window, watching the void as if she could see something Ethan couldn't. He finally broke the silence. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" Her gaze didn't move. "Yes," she said simply. "What is it?" he asked. Her silver eyes turned to him, calm but sharp. "The weapon?" Ethan frowned. "What weapon?" "We just used the ship's guns. They worked fine." She shook her head slowly. "No, those are tools for defense, meant to delay, not destroy." Ethan's stomach tightened. "And the weapon you're talking about?" Her voice lowered. "It is something the Korath fear, something they would kill." To control, he leaned forward in the pilot's chair. "Why haven't we used it yet?" Her answer was quick. "Because using it comes with a cost." The weight in her voice made him uneasy. "What kind of cost?" Her gaze met his. "The bond between you and the ship will deepen beyond anything you can reverse." Ethan looked away, unsure if that was a threat or a warning. He could still feel the ship in his mind, the steady beat of its engines, the faint awareness of the stars around them. If that connection grew stronger, would he still be himself? Before he could speak, the bond pulsed sharply. Something was closing in. "They're back," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "Yes," Arya replied, "and they bring more than the stalker." The ship's sensors lit up, showing 3 new blips closing fast. They formed a triangle around the wounded shadow stalker. Ethan's mouth went dry. "That's a hunting pack," Arya said, her voice quiet but edged with urgency. "They'll corner us and tear us apart." "Then maybe it's time for your big, scary weapon," Ethan said. Arya studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You must guide it with me." She stepped closer, placing one hand over his chest. "Don't fight the ship," she said. "Let it take from you your strength, your focus, your will." Ethan's heart thudded. "And if I don't have enough?" Her eyes softened. "Then it will take all that you are. No more time to think." The hunting pack closed in, weapons glowing along their hulls. Ethan closed his eyes and let the bond open fully. The ship surged in his mind, flooding him with sensation, the cold of deep space, the hum of power stored deep in its core. Somewhere in that endless awareness, he felt it. The weapon. It wasn't a gun or a missile. It was something deeper, like a force coiled tight inside the ship's heart. "Guide it." Arya's voice echoed in his thoughts. He focused on the nearest hunter. Picturing its destruction, the ship responded instantly, channels of light racing through its systems. Panels in the control room glowed brighter than ever before. The hum grew into a deep vibration that rattled the air. Outside, the space around the ship seemed to bend. Ethan's breath caught. "What's it doing?" "Gathering," Arya said, her own voice tense now. "Do not break focus." The nearest hunter fired, blue energy streaking toward them. Ethan didn't move. The ship's coiled force pulsed once, and the blast simply vanished, absorbed into the twisting space around them. The weapon was ready. Ethan pushed with his mind, sending all his will into the bond. The ship unleashed it. Light exploded from the hull, not as a beam, but as a wave, an expanding shock of shimmering force that rippled outward. The first hunter was caught instantly, its hull buckling before it shattered into drifting fragments. The second was thrown backward, its systems flickering. The third turned to flee, but the wave caught its tail and sent it spinning out of control. Even the shadow stalker recoiled. Retreating into the black, the wave faded. Leaving only silence and drifting debris, Ethan slumped in the chair, his chest heaving. His head felt heavy, his thoughts slow. The bond still pulsed, but now it felt different, deeper, heavier. He could feel Arya more clearly than ever. Not just her words, but her emotions. The tension in her, the faint trace of relief. He looked up at her. That was incredible. She didn't smile. It was dangerous, she said. You gave the ship more of yourself than you. Realize Ethan tried to stand, but his legs felt weak. How much more? Her silver eyes met his, enough that it will never release you now. Ethan swallowed hard. I guess that means I'm stuck with you. A faint curve touched her lips. Yes, she said softly. But we are still not safe. She turned. Back to the window, her gaze fixed on the void ahead. This was only one battle, she said. The war is still coming through the bond. Ethan felt a distant tremor, faint but growing. Something far larger than the hunting pack was. Out there, waiting. The shroud thinned until the stars returned. The cold, less black, stretched in every direction, but Ethan couldn't relax. The bond between him and the ship still hummed softly in the back of his mind. He could feel faint ripples from the shadow stalker somewhere behind them. It was hurt, yes, but not destroyed. Predators didn't give up so easily. Arya stood near the window, watching the void as if she could see something Ethan couldn't. He finally broke the silence. You're thinking about it, aren't you? Her gaze didn't move. Yes, she said simply. What is it? He asked. Her silver eyes turned to him, calm but sharp. The weapon? Ethan frowned. What weapon? We just used the ship's guns. They worked fine. She shook her head slowly. No, those are tools for defense, meant to delay, not destroy. Ethan's stomach tightened. And the weapon you're talking about? Her voice lowered. It is something the Korath fear, something they would kill. To control, he leaned forward in the pilot's chair. Why haven't we used it yet? Her answer was quick, because using it comes with a cost. The weight in her voice made him uneasy. What kind of cost? Her gaze met his. The bond between you and the ship will deepen beyond anything you can reverse. Ethan looked away, unsure if that was a threat or a warning. He could still feel the ship in his mind, the steady beat of its engines, the faint awareness of the stars around them. If that connection grew stronger, would he still be himself? Before he could speak, the bond pulsed sharply. Something was closing in. They're back, Ethan said through clenched teeth. Yes, Arya replied, and they bring more than the stalker. The ship's sensors lit up, showing 3 new blips closing fast. They formed a triangle around the wounded shadow stalker. Ethan's mouth went dry. That's a hunting pack, Arya said. Her voice quiet but edged with urgency. They'll corner us and tear us apart. Then maybe it's time for your big, scary weapon, Ethan said. Arya studied him for a moment, then nodded. You must guide it with me. She stepped closer, placing one hand over his chest. Don't fight the ship, she said. Let it take from you your strength, your focus, your will. Ethan's heart thudded. And if I don't have enough? Her eyes softened. Then it will take all that you are. No more time to think. The hunting pack closed in, weapons glowing along their hulls. Ethan closed his eyes and let the bond open fully. The ship surged in his mind, flooding him with sensation, the cold of deep space, the hum of power stored deep in its core. Somewhere in that endless awareness, he felt it. The weapon. It wasn't a gun or a missile. It was something deeper, like a force coiled tight inside the ship's heart. Guide it. Arya's voice echoed in his thoughts. He focused on the nearest hunter. Picturing its destruction, the ship responded instantly, channels of light racing through its systems. Panels in the control room glowed brighter than ever before. The hum grew into a deep vibration that rattled the air. Outside, the space around the ship seemed to bend. Ethan's breath caught. "What's it doing?" "Gathering," Arya said, her own voice tense now. "Do not break focus." The nearest hunter fired, blue energy streaking toward them. Ethan didn't move. The ship's coiled force pulsed once, and the blast simply vanished, absorbed. Into the twisting space around them, the weapon was ready. Ethan pushed with his mind, sending all his will into the bond. The ship unleashed it. Light exploded from the hull, not as a beam, but as a wave, an expanding shock of shimmering force that rippled outward. The first hunter was caught instantly, its hull buckling before it shattered into drifting fragments. The second was thrown backward, its systems flickering. The third turned to flee, but the wave caught its tail and sent it spinning out of control. Even the shadow stalker recoiled. Retreating into the black, the wave faded. Leaving only silence and drifting debris, Ethan slumped in the chair, his chest heaving. His head felt heavy, his thoughts slow. The bond still pulsed, but now it felt different, deeper, heavier. He could feel Arya more clearly than ever. Not just her words, but her emotions. The tension in her, the faint trace of relief. He looked up at her. That was incredible. She didn't smile. "It was dangerous," she said. "You gave the ship more of yourself than you." Realize Ethan tried to stand, but his legs felt weak. How much more? Her silver eyes met his, enough that it will never release you now. Ethan swallowed hard. "I guess that means I'm stuck with you." A faint curve touched her lips. "Yes," she said softly. "But we are still not safe." She turned back to the window, her gaze fixed on the void ahead. "This was only one battle," she said. "The war is still coming through the bond." Ethan felt a distant tremor, faint but growing. Something far larger than the hunting pack was out there, waiting.